हरिः ओम् नमस्सर्वेभ्यः। अष्टाध्यायी परिचयः इत्यस्य अद्य 35 पाठः। अस्मिन् वर्गे पदान्ते हल् सन्धौ आगमः कैः सूत्रैः विधीयते तेषाम् अध्ययनं कुर्मः। शुक्लाम्बरधरं विष्णुं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये। येनाक्षरसमाम्नायमधिगम्य महेश्वरात् कृत्स्नं व्याकरणं प्रोक्तं तस्मै पाणिनये नमः। वाक्यकारं वररुचिं भाष्यकारं पतञ्जलिं पाणिनिं सूत्रकारं च प्रणतोऽस्मि मुनित्रयम्। अस्माकं वर्गस्य द्वे प्रयोजने अष्टाध्याय्याः आहत्य षट्शतस्य सूत्राणां व्याख्यासहितम् उदाहरणसहितं च अध्ययनं, तथा च अष्टाध्याय्याः प्रथमाध्यायस्य प्रथमपादस्य द्वितीयपादस्य कण्ठस्थीकरणम्। इदानीम् अस्मिन् वर्गे अस्माभिः हल् सन्धिप्रकरणे पदान्ते आगमः कथं विधीयते तथा च कैः सूत्रैः विधीयते तस्य विस्तरेण अध्ययनं करिष्यते। पूर्वस्मिन् पाठे अस्माभिः पदान्ते हल् सन्धौ आदेशः कथं भवति इत्यस्य अध्ययनं कृतं। तत्र नकारस्य लोपः, कुत्वं, जष्ट्वम्, अनुस्वारादेशः, अनुस्वारस्य परसवर्णादेशः इत्येते सर्वे विषयाः सूत्रैः सह अस्माभिः अधीताः। अद्य अग्रे गच्छामः। अद्य पदान्ते हल् सन्धौ आगमः कथं भवति इत्यस्य अध्ययनं कुर्मः। परन्तु तस्मात् पूर्वं केचन विषयाः सन्ति. So there are a couple of things that I need to discuss. First is about homeworks, writing prakriya in the homeworks. So people are submitting the homeworks of class 31 and 32, and I have seen that people are writing prakriya in whatever way they want. So some are writing prakriya in form of tables, some are writing in horizontal manner, some are giving unnecessary badhyabadhaka bhava in the prakriya, some are giving descriptions of the sutra in the prakriya. So I just wanted to spend a few minutes in explaining the exact method or exact style in which the prakriya has to be written in all the homeworks. This was also shown in class number 31. You basically start with either the Vigraha Vakya or whatever is given to you. And on every line, after putting an arrow, you write one transformation. Say, for example, here there is a Tugagama, then Kakara and Ukara is removed, then Takara is converted to Dakara, and so on. And next to that change, in the brackets, write the Sutram with the number and what that Sutram is doing. So for example, छे च इति अत्र अस्मिन् उदाहरणे धकारोत्तरस्य अकारस्य तुगागमः, नो चेत् हलन्त्यम् इति ककारस्य इत्संज्ञा. You do not have to write the meaning of छे च or halantyam or tasya lopah. You just write whatever is being executed with help of that sutram in this prakriya. And if the sutram is not taught, you just write the transformation, takarasya jashtve dakaraha, and so on. So I have seen people writing literally essays for every step, like anena sutrena etad vidhiyate, tad badhitva anyena sutrena idam vidhiyate, and so on. We don't write badhyabhataka bhava, we don't write meanings of the sutram, we don't write padacheda, and so on. Just write one line explanation in that particular context. That also, in the initial days, I'm going to make it compulsory. As the course proceeds, that's also completely optional. So you can just say snigdha tuk chaya, and in bracket you can just write checha comma adyanto takito as the course proceeds. But for now, as we are beginning the process of writing prakriyas, this particular one line explanation is necessary, but nothing other than that. Please don't make fancy tables, please don't write paragraphs and so on. It is not how a prakriya is written, and it is also making me very hard to read your answer and extract what you have actually written. So that's first thing. The second thing I wanted to discuss was something related to the Pragriya Samya, and there was some discussion on the group, but seems that people are still confused about this particular point. So there are two sutras of the Pragriya Samya that we studied, Idude Dvivachanam Pragriyam and Adasomat. Now, if you look at these two sutras carefully, in Idude Dvivachanam Pragriyam, in the Sutrartha, we are saying Idude Dantam Dvivachanam. So, that Dvivachanam which ends in Dirgha Ikara, Dirgha Ukara, and Dirgha Ekara. The question that was asked was, from where is this antam bit coming up? Because the sutram doesn't have antam at all. The sutram has idudet. So how are we deriving idudedantam? The answer which is there in front of you on the slide is that itudet iti dvivachanam ityasya visheshanam ataha atra tadanta vidhi bhavati. Tadanta vidhi is one of the very crucial concepts. We have studied it back in class 26 and I have been using it again and again starting class number 21. But if you are not sure, you should go back to class number 26 and understand the discussion of Tadanta Vidhi, which is given under Yena Vidhis Tadantasya. What you're seeing on the screen is a slide from class number 26. Yena Vidhis Tadantasya, which is commonly referred as Tadanta Vidhi, tells us Visheshanena Tadantasya Samyasyat Swasya Rupasya. In simple language, विशेषणेन निर्दिष्टः विधिः तं विशेषणं स्वीकृत्य अपि भवति तदन्तं स्वीकृत्य अपि भवति. So in any sutram where there is a visheshana vishesha pair, you will end up in doing tadanta vidhi. Obviously, there are exceptions to it, but we will keep those aside. In the current case, for example, in the case of idude dvivachanam pragruyam, there is a clear visheshana vishesha pair. Idudet is the visheshanam, dvivachanam is the visheshyam. What kind of dvivachanam? Idudet dvivachanam. So there is a visheshana vishesha pair. That's exactly what I have written over here. Idudet iti dvivachanam ityasya visheshanam asti. Because you have visheshana vishesha pair, there will be tadanta vidhi. The visheshana undergoes a tadanta. So ikarantam, ukarantam, ekarantam dvivachanam iti atra arthaha siddhyati. So you do not need vyakhyanas to understand that there is a Tadanta Vidhi over here. Tadanta Vidhi is just like the way you see a Shashti in the Sutra and you don't need a vyakhyanas to tell you every time that it is a Sthani. There is a Sutram called Shashti Sthani Yoga and you have to apply it every time. In exactly the same way, there is a sutram called Yena Vidhis Tadantasya and anytime there is a Visheshana Vishesha, you have to apply that sutram. So atra it ut et iti dvivachanam ityasya visheshanam asti ata atra tadanta vidhi pravartate. Now compare and contrast it with the immediate next sutram adasomat. Now in adasomat, idudet comes as an anuvrutti, but dvivachanam is not coming as an anuvrutti. Therefore, in the sutram adasomat, there is no visheshana vishesha bhava. There is only idudet sitting over there. Therefore, Tadanta Vidhi is not immediate, and therefore, the Sutra Artha that we are going to do is we are not going to say Ikarantam, Ukarantam, and Ekarantam, but we are simply going to say Ikaraha, Ukaraha, Ekaraha. And therefore, in the Adasomat Sutram, we clearly said Makarat paraha vidyamanaha ikaraha ukaraha ekaraha pragriya samyakaha bhavati. We did not do tadanta vidhi over here. So understand the difference. In the previous sutram, if you go on the previous slide, you are having over here ikarantam ukarantam ekarantam dvivachanam, which means atra sampurnasya shabdasya pragriya samya kruta asti. Contrast it with right next sutra, and what it says is only ikara, ukara, ekara are pragruhya, which means varnasya atra pragruhya samya kruta asti. Now the immediate question that follows is that then why are we taking only the examples called ami and amu? There are examples like amibhihi or amishu where there is an ikara after a makara. So even in such examples, the ikara qualifies to become pragriya. The answer, now this is not given in any commentaries. The simple answer over here is that the pragriya samya for such udaharanas, for such words makes no sense. The purpose of pragriya samya is to block an ach sandhi, which means an ach letter must immediately follow, which automatically means the ikara, ukara or ekara must be at the end. And therefore, for all practical purposes, the meaning of adasomat, even though we say ikar, ukar, ekar are pragruhya samyaka, the meaning automatically is understood as antimaha ikaraha, antimaha ukara, antimaha ekaraha cha pragruhya samyakaha bhavati, and therefore the examples are limited to amu and ami. So therefore, in this particular example, adasomat, we have to resort to practicality, not even vyakhyanas, but practicality. Obviously, vyakhyanas is the primary driver for that practicality. So you refer to the vyakhyanas and mainly practicality and say the only valid examples are amu and ami, whereas in the previous sutram, the examples are ikarantam, ukarantam and ekarantam dvivachanasya rupam. So this should clarify the entire confusion about idude dvivachanam pragruhyam and other somat. One last point before we move to today's class. Some people have complained that the bit.ly URLs don't work. So I have now created a separate website for the course, basically sites.google.com/ashtadhyayi-parichaya. If you go to that slide, all the same documents which you can access through bit.ly, same documents are over here, nothing new is there. So you can continue using your previous bit.ly links, or you can just forget all those links and bookmark this single page, and then all the course introduction, class recordings, homework, sutra list, tests, YouTube playlist, everything is collected together on this particular site on this page. Any questions about any of the previous classes? You can ask them right now. Otherwise, let's move on to current class. In the current class, what we are going to talk is the sutras that give the agama in case of hal sandhis. So hal sandhishu jayamanaha agamaha padante jayamanaha agamaha. There are only 5 sutras and they are all sequentially placed in Ashtadhyayi. So see, in the previous class we learned about Monuswaraha, Nashchapadantasya Jhali and so on. A little later, starting from the Sutram 8.3.28, there are exactly 5 sutras that are sequentially placed by Panini Maharshi. Mnoho Kuktukshari, Dah Si Dhut, Nascha, Shi Tuk, and Ngamorha Swadachi Gamunnityam. These are the 5 sutras that talk about 5 different agamas in case of hal sandhis. So Mnoho Kuktukshari talks about Kugagama. So Kuk iti agamaha or Tuk iti agamaha. So both are Kit agamas. Tuk is also a Kit agama. It is not a Tit agama. Kuk and Tuk both are Kit agamas. Dahasi Dhutta. So it is a Dhut agamaha. So this is a Tit agamaha. Nashcha, same Dhut agamaha. She tuk, there is a Tuk agamaha. And Namo Rhaswadachi Gamunyam, there is a Ngut agamaha, Nut agamaha, and Nut agamaha. So lots of complex agamas are present in these 5 sutras. In fact, these 5 sutras are the most convoluted sutras in the entire Halsandhi Prakaranam, because the prakriya that they generate involves many other sutras in the process. So just after, say for example, if you just apply dasi dhut, it starts a chain of further steps. Newer and newer sutras are invoked. We are going to see all of them. Some of these sutras we will study in the upcoming classes. Some of these we might have already studied, but a lot of sutras get involved in the process. Some, as I mentioned, are new, some are already taught. We will be studying the full prakriya for all this. And wherever new sutras are being encountered, I'll just mention the sutra name in one of the upcoming classes. Those sutras will definitely be taught. So please pay attention specifically from the point of view of Prakriya. Please pay close attention to today's class. One point before we start, there are 5 sutras over there. The first 4 sutras, Mnoho Kuktukshari, Dasedhuta, Nascha, Shituka. These 4 sutras are optional. Optional in the sense the agama that these sutras give is Vaikalpika. It is optional. Whereas for the next sutram, you can actually see the word Nitya nityam present at the end of the sutram. Gamo raswad achigamun nityam. Nityam means compulsory. And Panini Maharshi purposely puts that word over there because he knows that I have given previous 4 agamas as optional. Somebody might believe the next agama is also optional. I don't want them to believe like that. So let me put the word nityam at the end. So gamoraswadachigamun nityam iti sutrena ye trayah agamaha uktaha santi te nityam pravartante अन्यैः सूत्रैः ये आगमाः उक्ताः ते सर्वे तु विकल्पेन भवन्ति. So with this, let's start with the agamas. I'm going to discuss the agama first so that you understand it, and then we will go to the sutram. At any point in time, if you have questions, please raise your hand. Make sure that whatever is being explained, you understand it thoroughly. Let's start with the very first sutram. The sutram is Mnoho Kuk Tukshari 8328, and the sutra gives 2 agamas, Kuk agama and Tuk agama. Let me repeat once again. Kuk is a kit agama, which means it is added at the end of that particular word. Similarly, tuk, even though there is a ta word, it is actually the word of the ta letter is the letter of the agama. The itsamnyaka letter is ka. Therefore, this is also a kit agama, and therefore it will also be added at the end of the corresponding word. Let's talk with the kuk agama. पदान्तङ्कारस्य यस्य पदस्य अन्ते ङ क ख ग घ ङ दैट् ङकारः यस्य पदस्य अन्ते ङकारः विद्यते तथा च तस्माद् अनन्तरं शर् इति वर्णः अस्ति. शर् मीन्स श श एंड स. So you have ङकार हल letter plus you have either sh or sh or s. In this particular condition, पदान्तङ्कारस्य विकल्पेन कुक् आगमः भवति. So whatever is this pada which is ending in nakara, after that pada kuk agama, which is essentially kakara, because the itsamnika kakara is removed and the ukara is uchcharanartha, so only ka iti avashishyate, so that ka is to be added. So पदान्तङ्कारस्य शर्वर्णे परे विकल्पेन कुक् इति आगमः भवति. अस्मिन् आगमे ककारः इत्सम्यकः, द लास्ट ककार इज इत्सम्यक, उकारः उच्चारणार्थः, द्वयोः अपि लोपे कृते प्रथमः ककारः तत्र अवशिष्यते. अयम् आगमः कित्वात् अन्त्यावयव रूपेण विधीयते. सो हियर इज एन एग्जांपल. प्रांग प्लस शेते. प्रांग इज somebody who walks first. So pranchati, pramukhyena gacchati, a leader or the one who walks first or is going towards east direction, either way you can say that particular person is called prang. So prang, prancha is a chakaranta pratipadika over there. The prathama ekvachanam of that is prang. We are talking about the pada, so we have to say the prang as prathama ekvachan subantam plus shete. पदान्ते ङकारः अस्ति, अग्रे शर्वर्णः अस्ति, ङकारस्य कुक् आगमः भवति. प्राङ् क शेते, प्राङ् शेते. So ङ followed by k followed by sh, प्राङ् शेते. अग्रे शकारस्य विकल्पेन छत्वं भवति. We are going to learn this sutram. Most of you already know these sandhis from your Kovida Shiksha classes, but sutras might be not familiar. So we will do the sutra study also in one of the upcoming classes. परंतु अग्रे किमस्ति, विकल्पेन शकारस्य छत्वं भवति. सो ककारादनन्तरः यः शकारः अस्ति तस्य विकल्पेन छत्वादेशे कृते प्राङ् क छेते इत्यपि सिद्ध्यति. And this कुगागम is fundamentally optional. अतः मूलः कुगागमः यः पक्षिकः तस्य अभाव पक्षे just combine ng and sh, प्राङ् शेते इत्यपि सिद्ध्यति. So you get 3 forms: प्राङ् शेते, प्राङ् छेते and प्राङ् शेते. This is for padant ngakarasya kuk agamah bhavati. Similarly, you have padant णकारस्य ट ठ ड ढ ण, पदान्त णकारस्य शर्वर्णे परे विकल्पेन टुक् आगमः भवति. So see, k varga last letter gets the agama which is the ka varga first letter. Nakarasya agamaha kakaraha. Similarly, ta varga last letter gets the agama which is the ta varga first letter. So padantanakarasya sharvarne pare vikalpena tuk agamaha ityukte ta iti agamaha bhavati. So exactly same, a different example will be given. Sugana, a good counter, the one who can count well. I think we have come across this word earlier. So sugana plus shashtha. So padantanakara asti, agre sharvarna asti, tuk agamaha bhavati. So sugana ta shashtha, suganit shashtha. पक्षे तुगागमं विना सुगण षष्ठः इत्यपि सिद्ध्यति. So in this particular example, you don't see the chatvam because chatvam is for shakara. Whenever we take examples of shakara, I will talk about chatvam. But here in this particular example, there is a shakara, so there is no chatvam. Therefore, either you do the tugagama and get the form sugant shashtha, or with tugagamam vina sugan shashtha ityapi siddhyati. So now let's look at the sutram. The sutras are easy. The concept is a little complex to understand. Ngnoho kuk tuk shari. Very simple. Ngnoho ityukte ngakara nakarayoho. Ngakaraha tatha nakaraha. Tayoho iti tau iti ngno tayoho. Simple dvandva samasa is there. So ngnoho, and the adhikar of padasya comes as an anuvritti. So ngnoho padayoho visheshana visheshya tadanta vidhi nakarantasya padasya or nakarantasya padasya. So ngnoho nakarantasya nochet nakarantasya padasya kuk tuk. These two are agamas. Dvau agaminau dvau agamau yatha sankham agamaha vidhiyate. So you have nakara and nakara. These are the two places where the agama comes, and then you have kuk and tuk. So it's just one-to-one mapping. Nakaranta padasya kuk agamaha, anakaranta padasya tuk agamaha iti atra arthaha bhavati. Kitvat ayam agamaha padasya ante bhavati. Therefore, gnoho padasya shari samhitayam agre sharvarne pare kuk tuk विकल्पेन भवति. So shari iti paranittam sharvarne pare va iti anuvartate. So va is not directly present in the sutram. Va comes from just two sutras earlier. Let's go to and see. So he ma pare va, there is a va present over there. This va is going to come as an anuvritti in all these sutras. Mnoho kuktuk shari, dase dhut, nascha and shituk. In all these four sutras, va is going to come, and then in the fifth sutram, nityam is going to come, which is going to block that particular va. But till now, for four sutras, va is going to come. So that's basically ngnoho kuk tuk shari sharvarne pare vikalpena agamaha bhavati. So the examples. Let's understand the sutrartha. Nakaranta padasya sharvarne pare vikalpena kuk agamaha. Nakaranta padasya sharvarne pare vikalpena tuk agamaha. उदाहरणं प्रांशेते प्रांकशेते वैकल्पिक छत्वे आगमं विना एतादृशानि त्रीणि रूपाणि भवन्ति. Similarly, prang shashtha. I'm going to give three examples for prang and then three examples for sugan. Sh, and sa. So prang shashtha, prang ka shashtha. Ka plus sh is ksha. So prang shashtha. Prang saptamaha, prang ka saptamaha, prang saptamaha. And pakshe without agama also root exists. Similarly, sugan shete, suganit shete. Shakar is there, therefore chatvam is optional. Suganit chete, agamam vina sugan shete. Sugan shashtha, suganit shashtha, sugan shashtha. Sugan saptamaha, suganit saptamaha, sugan saptamaha. अनेन प्रकारेण गणोः कुक् टुक् शरि इति सूत्रेण कुगागमः तुगागमः च विधीयते. Any questions? Now, before we go ahead, there is this particular line in Siddhanta Kaumudi that we need to understand. Siddhanta Kaumudikara, basically, this is actually obvious, but Siddhanta Kaumudikara is highlighting the importance of going through these sutras in sequence. So, Kaumudikara says, कुक्टुकोः असिद्धत्वात् जष्ट्वं न. If you look at this particular prank shete case, or even this last one, prank shete, what is happening over here? Understand, prang without the kakara. Prang was the original padam. Kakara is added as an agama to the pada. So effectively, the final pada is now prang followed by ka. Yadagamas tadguni bhutas tadgrahane grihante. We have learned this. So agamas become the part of the original entity, which means prang iti padam asti. Atah idanim prang ka iti padam bhavati. Now the question is, you have a padam called prangka, and we have seen the sutram jhalanjashonte. Padante vidyamanasya jhal varnasya jashvarnadeshah bhavati. For example, vach becomes vak and then it becomes vag, kakarasya gakaradesha. In exactly the same way, prang should become prang with the jashtvam coming in the picture is what somebody might doubt. So that's what Kaumudikara is explaining. Kuktukoho asiddhatvat. The jashtvam is given by 8 to 39 jhalam jashonte, whereas the kuk and tuk agamas are all the way in the 8.3. So we have even crossed one pada and we have come all the way ahead. So there is absolutely no way Jhalam Jashonte can see this kakara or takara, and therefore kuktukoho agre jashtvam na bhavati kimarthamiti chet झलाम जशोन्ते इति तत्र असिद्धं वर्तते. सुकुक्तुकोः असिद्धत्वात् जष्ट्वं न इति कौमुदीकारेण अत्र उक्तम् अस्ति. Now it turns out that there is a Vartika in this particular context that also generates something other form. This Vartika is called Chayo Dvitiya Shari Paushkara Sadehe iti Vacham. Chayaha. So Chayo is Chayaha. Dvitiya is Dvitiyaha. So Chayaha Dvitiyaha Shari पौष्करसादेः इति वाच्यम्. सो चयः इत्युक्ते चय वर्णस्य. चय इज अ प्रत्याहार. च ख फ छ ठ थ च ट त क प. So वर्ग प्रथमा are included in the चय प्रत्याहार. So चय चयः इत्युक्ते चय वर्णस्य एकवचनम् अस्ति. नॉट एकवचनं, प्रथमा बहुवचनम् अस्ति. So चयः चय इति वर्णाः, और यू कैन इवन टेक षष्ठी एकवचनं चय वर्णस्य स्थाने वर्ग द्वितीयाः भवन्ति, उभयथा कर्तुं शक्यते. बट चय वर्णानाम् इत्युक्ते वर्ग प्रथम वर्णानां किं भवति? वर्ग प्रथम वर्णानां द्वितीयाः वर्ग द्वितीय वर्णाः आदेशरूपेण विधीयन्ते. So this Vartika says that Varga Prathamas, the Ka, Cha, Ta, Ta, Pa, are converted into Varga Dvitiyas, the Kha, Cha, Tha, Tha, Pa, when Shari, Sharvarne Pare. Chay Varnaha, Sharvarne Pare, Varga Dvitiya Varneshu Adesha Rupena Parivartante. Kada Kasya Matena Paushkara Sadehe Matena. Paushkara Sadi was some Acharya Vayyakarna. Tasya Matena Ityukte Vikalpena. Anytime Panini Maharshi quotes somebody else's name, he is basically doing two things, as I mentioned. He is paying respect to that particular Acharya, giving the credits, not taking everything on his own. And he is also saying that this is optional. Anytime you see Acharya name, in 99% of the cases, the Karya is optional. Therefore, Atra Paushkara Sadehe ityukte Paushkara Sadi ityakhyasya Acharyasya Matena ityukte Atra Vikalpena. सो कहा अत्र वार्तिकस्य अर्थः वर्ग प्रथम वर्णस्य शर्वर्णे परे विकल्पेन वर्ग द्वितीयादेशः भवति. This is a stand alone Vartika, nothing related to Manoho Kuktuk Shari. It's a standalone Vartika, and it is given much later. I think it is given somewhere in 8.4 Nadinya Crochet Putrasya, I think. In this particular 8.4.48, I think, look at this Vartika. Chayodvitiyaha Shari Paushkara Saderiti Vacham. So this Vartika is associated with Sutra number 8.4.48, much later. We are currently studying 8.3.28. But this particular Vartika is used in the current context, so I am just teaching it. But before that, let's see the Vartika in a standalone manner. So Varga Prathama Varnasya Varga Dvitiya Vargadesha Varga Dvitiya Varnadesha Bhavati Sharvarne Pare. So example is, if you have a Vats, very well known word, Vats, there is a Varga Prathama letter called T, and then there is a Shar letter called Sakara. So Varga Prathama is optionally converted to Varga Dvitiya, giving Vats. This is an optional conversion, but Vats is 100% valid Sanskrit word. The Thakara is generated from Takara by Chayodvitiyaha Shari Paushkara Saderiti Vacham. There must be Visarga in this Vartika. There is no Sutram that will do the Visarga Lopa. So Chayodvitiyaha Shari Paushkara Saderiti Vacham. So Vathasa and Vatsa are both. Similarly, Apsara. Apsara. Pa becomes Pa. Apsara. So even Apsara is still 100% valid Sanskrit word generated by Chayodvitiyaha Shari Paushkara Saderiti Vacham. So what is happening in this current case? When you have prang shete and when you are converting prang k shete, kakara can now get converted to varga dvitiya kakara in presence of this sh, which is a shar letter. So prang k shete iti vaikalpikam rupam. Similarly, sugan shashtha ityatra tugagame krute suganit shashtha टकारस्य वर्गद्वितीये ठकारे परिवर्तनम् अनेन वार्तिकेन भवति इदम् अपि वैकल्पिकं रूपम्. And you have to understand that when you are using Vartikas, specifically in the context of Tripadi Sutras, it is important to understand which Tripadi Sutra that Vartika is associated with. किमर्थमिति चेत् तस्य त्रिपादी सूत्रस्य यः क्रमाङ्कः सः एव तस्य वार्तिकस्य क्रमाङ्करूपेण स्वीक्रियते. So here this particular vartikam Chayodvitiyaha Shari Paushkara Saderiti Vacham is considered associated with Nadinya Crochet Putrasya, which is 8.4.48. I just showed this sutram over here, 8.4.48. What this means is that any situation where there is a Varga Prathama letter followed by a Shar letter which is generated before 8.4.48 can be seen by the Vartika. But any situation where a Varga Prathama is generated after 8.4.48, and there are going to be cases we will soon see right on the next two slides. So in a situation where Varga Prathama does not exist originally, but it is generated after 8.4.48, you cannot apply Chayodvitiyaha Shari Paushkara Saderiti Vachyam in those particular situations. But here, for this particular Gnoho Kuktukshari, because the Varga Prathama was available much earlier, we can apply this particular Vartika. So a total of 4 forms are generated specifically for Prang Shete. So we have Prang Shete, Prang plus Shete, Ityata Prang Ka Shete. You can stop over here. So that's the first. You can convert Shakara to Chakara. So that's the second. You can convert kakara to khakara, so that's third, and you can altogether not do the kugagama, so prangshete, that's the fourth. So these are the 4 forms that are generated from prangshete. From sugan shashtha, 3 forms will be generated because there is no chatvam. And त्रिपादी सिद्धत्वस्य संदर्भेण इदं वार्तिकं नादिन्याक्रोशे पुत्रस्य इति सूत्रेण संस्थापनीयम्. And अस्य वार्तिकस्य प्रयोगात् अनन्तरं पुनः वर्गद्वितीयस्य चर्त्वं न करणीयम्. So there will be a sutram kharicha that you can invoke, but if you again want to convert khakara by doing a chartvam to kakara, then what is the point in keeping khakara? So asya vartikasya vidhana samarthyat eva अस्माद् अनन्तरं तस्य वर्गद्वितीय वर्णस्य पुनः चर्त्वे वर्ग प्रथम वर्णः न करणीयः. You retain that वर्गद्वितीय as it is. This completes the discussion of Gnoho Kuktukshari. If there are any questions, I can take them specifically with this sutram only. If not, we can move ahead. So we are done with Gnoho Kuktuk Shari. The next agama that we are going to talk, the sutram is Daha Si Dhutta, and it is a Dhutta agama. So we did Kuk agama and Tuk agama. Now we are doing Dhutta agama. Padanta Dakarat. Lots of conditions are going to change, so please pay attention. Padanta Dakarat, no chet Padanta Sakara, sorry, Nakarat. So Padanta Dakarat, no chet Padanta Nakarat, Sakaraha vidyate chet, tasya sakarasya vikalpena dhut agamaha bhavati. So the agama is now on the sakara and it is a titta agama, which means it will be applied before the sakara, which means it will be standing in between that d or na and sa. So it is exactly like the previous case. The only difference was in the previous case, the agama was a kit agama on the previous entity. In the current case, it is a tit agama on the next entity. Eventually, the position of the agama is the same. Now, why do a tit agama in one case and do a kit agama in other case? There are reasons. Panini is not just doing these things randomly. There is a reason why the kit agama is done in the previous case. There is a reason why a tit agama is done in this particular case. Even though the position is the same, there are reasons. We will not go in those details. There is an advanced shastra over there. We are not yet equipped to understand that fully. For now, just take what Maharshi has done. In the previous case, there were two kit agamas. Now there is a tit agama. Dhutta iti agamaha bhavati. Dhakaraha tatra d or n तथा च स इत्येतयोः मध्ये स्थाप्यते. So let's see the examples. The first example is shad santaha. Six were there. Shad santaha. Santaha is san santahu santaha. Asa dhatoh shatru pratyayanta rupam prathama bahuvachanam. Shad santaha. There is a dakara which is at the end of the pada and there is a sakara. So you get a dhutta agama, shada dhutta santaha, shada dha santaha. So this is the first milestone. It's not the final form, it's just the milestone of applying that dahasi dhut sutram. You get shada dha santaha. Now there is a dhakara after which there is a sakara. So you will have to undo a chartvam. Chartva is, it happens when there is a khar letter in front. So jhal letter, most of you know what is a chartva. So jhal letter is converted to varga prathama. So dha is converted to ta. So that's the chartva. Why does it happen? Because there is a sakara, there is a karkasha vyanjana in front. When there is a karkasha vyanjana in front, a jhal letter gets converted to varga prathama. As soon as this dha gets converted to varga prathama, it now becomes a karkasha vyanjana, which means the dakara before that now has to undergo a chartva. So it is a double chartva, one chartva forcing another chartva. So shad dha santaha ityatra dhakarasya chartve takaraha tasya takarasya karanad dakarasya chartve takaraha. In the original situation, there was only dhakara, so dakara was not going to undergo chartva. You need a karkasha vyanjana in front. As soon as dhakara becomes takara, a karkasha vyanjana is now made available and da is now going to convert to ta. So shada santaha, shada dha santaha, chartve shada ta santaha, punah chartve shat ta santaha. This is the final form. So shat ta santaha iti atra antimam rupam asti. The next example, padanta nakarasya vishaye. So padanta nakarat parasya sakarasya api vikalpena dhut agamaha bhavati. So bhavan sundaraha, bhavan dhut sundaraha, bhavan dha sundaraha, chartve bhavan ta sundaraha. Here only one chartva because you need a jhal letter to be converted to char, nakara is not a jhal letter, nakarasya agre chartvam na bhavati, so bhavanit sundaraha. This is how the example of nakara plus sakara gives a final form. So you have shat ta santaha, which is dakaradanantaram sakarasya dhut agamaha, and bhavant sundaraha, which is nakaradanantaram sakarasya dhut agamaha. Both are optional agamas. I mean, both the examples, the dhut agama is optional. So pakshe dhudagamam vina केवलं चर्त्वे कृते भवान् सुन्दरः, not even chartva, केवलं वर्णमेलनं कृत्वे भवान् सुन्दरः. And in the previous case, पक्षे धुडागमं विना केवलं चर्त्वे कृते, let me edit this for everybody's understanding. So here we are going to say pakshe dhudagamam vina kevalam chartve krute shat santaha ityapi siddhyati. And here भवान् सुन्दरः इत्यत्र पक्षे धुडागमं विना केवलं वर्णमेलनं कृत्वा भवान्त सुन्दरः इत्यपि सिद्ध्यति. भवान् सुन्दर, सो भवान् सुन्दरः, नोत भवान् सुन्दरः केवलं वर्णमेलनं कृत्वा भवान् सुन्दरः, तुगागम धुडागमे कृते भवान्त सुन्दरः, एंड फॉर षड् सन्तः धुडागमे कृते षट् सन्तः, विना धुडागमं चर्त्वे कृते षट् सन्तः इत्यपि सिद्ध्यति. So this important point you have to understand, that in case of previous sutram, when we did kugagama and tugagama, the further process like chatvam and so on was optional, whereas here you cannot stop at the dhudagama, you have to continue the prakriya. Dhut agame krute dhakarasya agre chartvam avashyameva bhavati. Dha is compulsorily converted to takara. The chartva compulsorily happens. Tataha padantadakarat parasya sakarasya shtutvam nishidyate. In this particular case, तथा च डकारस्य चर्त्वं विधीयते. ततः, not ततः, तस्य अनुपस्थितौ. If the dhut agama is not done, then padanta dakarat parasya sakarasya shtutvam nishidyate. Tasya ततः च डकारस्य chartvam vidhiyate shat santah iti siddhyati. This shtutvam you can keep aside. We have not learned it. I just wrote over here for completion. You will come to know in tomorrow's class. So this is basically the summary of the examples of daha, si, dhut. So let's now actually take the sutram. The sutra is very simple. Dakarantat padat parasya. So daha, panchami asti. Dakarantat padat parasya sasya dhut va syat samhitayam. So dakaraha panchami ekvachanam. Dakaraha daha tasmat parasya. So padasya iti adhikaraha, because daha is panchami, padat iti viparinamyate. You can change the adhikaras like this because same adhikara runs for so many sutras. It's but natural that exact vibhakti and vachan may not be applicable. So padat iti viparinamyate, va iti anuvrittihi. So daha padat, tadanta vidhi happens, dakarantat padat, si. So there is a panchami and there is a saptami. Daha is a panchami, si is a saptami. Samhitayam dhut agamaha bhavati. There is no shashti. Ubhay nirdeshe panchami nirdesho baliyan. We actually saw this sutram itself as an example of ubhay nirdeshe panchami nirdesho baliyan. So si iti saptamyantam padam agaminah nirdesham karoti. So it will not indicate paranimitta, it will indicate the agami. So si ityukte sakarasya agamaha bhavati. Therefore, dakarantat padat parasya sakarasya dhut agamaha bhavati iti atra ashayah. Udaharanam षड सन्तः, षड धुट् सन्तः, षड ध सन्तः. 8455 खरिच iti chartve krute षड त सन्तः. The chartva is all the way at the end of Ashtadhyayi. 8455 षड त सन्तः. पुनरेकवारं डकारस्य चर्त्वे कृते षट् त सन्तः, षट् सन्तः इति अन्तिमं रूपं पक्षे धुडागमं विना केवलं चर्त्वे कृते. So even if you don't do dhudagama, chartvam is compulsory. So shat santah iti api siddhyati. Understand that in the previous slide we talked about the dakara and nakara. So padanta dakarat parasya tatha cha padanta nakarat parasya. We learned the example of shadasantaha for dakara, and we learned the example of bhavan sundaraha for padanta nakara. However, the way sutras are organized is that dahasi dhutta sutram is only for dakara and nascha is only for nakara. So if you see the sutrartha, dakarantat padat parasya sakarasya dhud, and the next sutram nakarantat padat parasya sakarasya dhud. Why keep two separate sutras? Why not just combine together? The reason is this Nashcha Sutra also comes as an anuvrutti in the immediately next sutra called Shituka. So if Panini Maharshi combines D and N, like he combined G and N in the previous sutra, Gno Ho Kuk Tukshari, he could have combined Daha and Naha, but then it might have caused extra confusion. अग्रे शीतुक इति सूत्रे डकारस्य अनुवृत्ति भवति वा नकारस्य भवति वा उभयोः भवति वा. So in order to avoid that confusion, and this is a pattern that you will see in many cases in Ashtadhyayi, केवलम अनुवृत्तेः सौलभ्यार्थम एकस्य सूत्रस्य स्थाने महर्षिणा सूत्रद्वयं कृतं दृश्यते. In exactly the same way over here, dahasi dhutta and nascha have been broken down. Currently, we are seeing dahasi dhutta, but nascha is going to be equally simple. So let's go back to this dahasi dhutta and ask one more question, which I mentioned a few minutes ago. In case of this shat santaha, this particular form shat ta santaha, वर्ग प्रथमात् इत्युक्ते तकारादनन्तरं सकारः अस्ति. वर्ग प्रथमात् परः शर्वर्णः अस्ति. अस्यां स्थितौ अत्र चयोद्वितीयाः शरिपौष्करसादेरिति वाच्यम् इति वार्तिकेन तकारस्य पाक्षिकः थकारादेशः संभवति वा. So just like the way vatsa became vathsa, in the same way shatta santaha, can it become shatta santaha? And the answer which I mentioned earlier is that shatta santaha ityatra dhakarasya takaradeshah खरिच इति सूत्रेण कृतः अस्ति. On the other hand, चयोद्वितीयाः शरिपौष्करसादेरिति वाच्यम् इति वार्तिकम् 8448 नादिन्याक्रोशे पुत्रस्य इति सूत्रेण सह स्वीक्रियते. And therefore, the chartvam that is done by kharicha, the takara which is generated by kharicha, is asiddha towards नादिन्याक्रोशे पुत्रस्य. नादिन्याक्रोशे पुत्रस्य इति सूत्रस्य कृते अतः तत्र निर्दिष्टस्य वार्तिकस्य अपि कृते खरिच इति सूत्रेण कृतं चर्त्वम् असिद्धम् अस्ति. And therefore षट् सन्तः षट् त सन्तः इत्यत्र अस्य वार्तिकस्य प्रयोगः न सम्भवति. So observe, even writing vartikas, specifically small sentences inside sutras, when it comes to tripadi, that is also an extremely logical and convoluted exercise on the part of vartikakara, because he has to place a vartika in tripadi in exactly that place where the positioning of the sutra matches the positioning of the vartika, and this kind of unwanted vargadvitiya deshas done because of kharicha and so on are avoided. So observe how core logic or how intense thinking must have gone in constructing all this. That's all about dahasi dhutta. The next sutram is nahacha. Now very simple, just dahasi dhutta ityasya sthane nahasi dhutta. That's all that it is trying to say by doing nahacha. So nahacha padasya padatiti virparamyate samhitayam vasi dhutta, everything is anuvritti. So naha padat si samhitayam va dhutta. I'll not even bother explaining. Nakarantat padat sakarasya संहितायां धुडागमः भवति इति अर्थः. भवान् सुन्दरः, धुडागमे कृते भवान् ध सुन्दरः, चर्त्वे कृते भवान् त सुन्दरः, एंड अग्रे भवान् सुन्दरः. पक्षे धुडागमं विना केवलं चर्त्वे कृते भवान् सुन्दरः. Now there is something interesting that you should remember, that we are talking about nakaranta padas over here. Nakaranta padat sakare pare dhudagama bhavati. We have already seen one sutram in the previous week for the nakaranta padas. Nalopah pratipadikantasya. The sutram nalopah pratipadikantasya says that if there is a nakaranta pada which is also a pratipadika, then the nakara is removed. And that sutram is 827 all the way before in Tripadi. Whereas in the current context, all that we are saying is there is a padanta nakara, which means that this particular sutram can act only when there is a nakara at the end of a pada, which is not a pratipadika. प्रातिपदिक संयम यदि पदम अस्ति तर्हि तस्य कृते न लोपः प्रातिपदिकान्तस्य इत्यनेन नकारस्य लोपः एव विधीयते. अतः अत्र भवान् इति पदमस्ति, प्रथम एकवचनमस्ति भवत् शब्दस्य, अतः अयं भवान् इति शब्दः अत्र उदाहरणरूपेण स्थापितः. परन्तु यदि तत्र प्रातिपदिकान्तं पदं विद्यते, यथा आत्मनः स्तुतिः इति उदाहरणं स्वीकुर्मः. अयं समासः, षष्ठीसमासः. अत्र अस्मिन् षष्ठीसमासे आत्मन् इति पूर्वपदं, स्तुति इति उत्तरपदं. Now when you combine atman plus stuti, are you going to apply the Nascha Sutra like Bhavan plus Sundaraha? Because there is a Na and then there is a Sa and then there is a Samhita. The answer is no. You cannot apply Nascha because Purvameva Nalopah Pratipadikantase Ittenena Tatra Pratipadikasya Ante Vidyamanasya Nakarasya Lopaha Jayate. So atra atman iti padam asti, samase पूर्वपदस्य पदसंज्ञा विद्यते, and obviously atman iti प्रातिपदिकम् अस्ति. अतः अत्र नकारस्य लोपे कृते आत्मस्तुति इत्येव जायते. You cannot apply nascha sutram. So understand, just because there is a condition called na plus sa, you cannot blindly do a dhudagama over there. You have to see which sutra can apply before the given sutra. अत्र बाध्यबाधक भावः, अत्र त्रिपाद्याः सूत्रक्रमः कीदृशः अस्ति इति सर्वं दृष्ट्वा तत्र उचितस्य सूत्रस्य प्रयोगः करणीयः. अतः अत्र आत्मनः स्तुति इत्यत्र आत्मन् प्लस स्तुति इति स्थिते नकारस्य नलोपः प्रातिपदिकान्तस्य इति सूत्रेण लोपः विधीयते. That completes the discussion of that completes the discussion of the gnoho kuktukshari, dahasi dhutta and nascha. Two sutras are remaining, shi tuka and gamor hisvadachi gamunityam. If there are any questions specifically related to what is being discussed right now, you can ask them. Ratnakar Mahoday.
Acharya, namaste. Basically, Nasya Padantasya, it speaks of Pratipadika and Pada. Nakara at the end of the Pratipadika. Nalopah Pratipadika, sorry. Whereas Nasya also speaks of Duttagama and then only the Lopa of Nakara. Is that so?
No, Nascha only talks about Dhut Agama. This is 8330, which is much later. It has nothing to do with Nakara Lopa. Nakara Lopa has to happen by Nalopa Pratipadikantasya if it is Pratipadikantam Padam. If it is not Pratipadikantam Padam, Nalopa is not applicable. So you come all the way down till 8330 and then you apply Dhudagama. Clear, right?
Anyways, fine. I'll get back once again. I'll see to the.
Yeah, you can. Yeah. I think more revision is probably important. If you once you revise, probably things will be clear.
Because you have given the udaharanam Atman plus Stuti where Dhudagama is not there.
Because 827 gets applied, right? When 827 gets applied, Nakara is removed. When Nakara is removed, you cannot reach 8330 and try to do a Dhudagama because there is no Nakara.
Right.
Right?
Fine. And one more question, Acharya, from the previous session, if you allow me. One. When I look at it, it's like takarasya jatvam, then dakarasya chutvam, and jakarasya charatvam. All these things go chronologically, rather wherever this jasatvam takes place, in all those places, Shutva and Charatva, they take place later in the chronological order.
No, they will always take place later, but not necessarily in anytime there is a Jashtva, it need not be followed by Shtutva and Chartva. It depends on what the Paranimitta is. If all those cases match, like for example, in the sky, sometimes planets align. So it's exactly in the same way. If the Purva Nimitta and Paranimitta aligns, then you will end up in the series of Jashtvam, Shtutvam, Chartvam. But it's not necessarily always the case.
Okay, because in the examples, whatever you have given, in all those three cases, it went like chronologically, like Snigdha
No,
and then Mlecha.
those things are there. But for example, if you take Vagartha, it is Vag plus Artha. So then Ka is becoming Ga, Jashtva, and it stops over there, Vagartha. There is no Shtutva or Chartva after that, right?
Okay.
Right?
That's what. Thank you.
Any further? Somebody has raised the hand, but I don't see that anymore. I think the question is not there. Reshma ji.
Namaste Mohoday. My question was Pratipadikanta Padam. Is it always related only to the Samas Prathama Pada?
Many cases, but not always. So, for example, this is actually a good question. In which was this class? Class number 34, right? So, if you, for example, go to class 34, let me try to open that PPT. Which class was there? Nalopa of Pratipadikanta. Class 34. Let's open that. I was not going to say anything about it, but just because you have asked a question, let me be honest with everyone. So in Nalopa Pratipadikantasya, we talked about Naman plus Su over here. Naman plus Su. So here there is no samasa, but still we are using Nalopa Pratipadikantasya. In Panchan plus Jasa, still we are using Nalopa Pratipadikantasya. Atmanaha Bodha is definitely a samasa. So we are using Nalopa Pratipadikantasya. And there is a example given towards the end of the 2 slides later. Atman plus Bhyasa. This is actually a Subanta Prakriya, but still we are using Nalopa of Pratipadikantasya. So these are various different cases where Nalopa of Pratipadikantasya is used. The condition is that it must be both a Pratipadika and a Pada in that particular situation. It cannot be just a Pada or just a Pratipadika. It should be both together. So what is happening in Naman plus Su Pratyay is being removed. So Naman retains the Pada Samnya of Subanta, Su Pratyaya, and Naman is the original Pratipadika. In Atmanaha Bodha, Atman, which is the Purva Pada in the Samasa, by definition it is a Pada and it is a Pratipadika. Atman is the Pratipadika. Panchan plus Jasa Pratyay is removed. So you only get Panchana, it is a Pratipadika, and therefore because of the Jas Pratyay, which is giving Pratyay Lope Pratyay Lakshana, it's going to give Padatva. So in such cases, you have to ensure that there is a Pada Samnya and a Pratipadika. It may be Samasa, it may be something else as well. Clear? Any questions? Astu. Agre gachhama. You can pull down your hand if you're done with the questions. Any further questions? Okay. Agre gachhamaha. So the next agama in the sequence is Tukka agama. So we are done with Dahasi Dhutta and we are done with Nasha. The next agama is Tukka agama. Now again, we did Kit agama, then we did Tit agama. Now we are going back to the Kit agama. So Kit agama, Tukka, Padanta Nakarasya. So the previous sutra was also for Padanta Nakara, but it was Nakarasya Sakare Pare. And now in this case, it is Nakarasya Shakare Pare. So very minor difference, but the agama suddenly changes. So if you have a condition of na plus sa, there is a dhut agama. The sutram is nashcha. Whereas if you have a condition of na plus sha, there is a tuk agama, and the sutram is shi tukka. That's what we are going to see right now. The sutram in the current context is this one. Oh, clear the screen. This shi tukka. So padanta nakarasya shakare pare vikalpena tuk agamaha bhavati. Bhavan shete. Tugagamaha bhavati. Look at this example. Tugagamaha bhavati. Bhavan ta shete. This is where the Shituka Sutra finishes, but it starts a chain reaction. So bhavan ta shete. Agre takarasya chutve krute bhavan cha shete. Now that chakara causes another shutva or nakara. So nakarasya shutve krute bhavanya cha shete. This is compulsory. So Tugagama is optional. If you don't do Tugagama, you can just combine Bhavan and Shete. But if you want to do Tugagama, then the Tugagama will force a Shutvam, a double Shutvam, then Vikalpena Chatvam. So Bhavanya Cha Chete. So Sh is becoming Ch. So Bhavanya Cha Chete. At this particular stage, Bhavaya cha chete, there is a sutram that executes called Jharo Jhari Savarne. We are going to learn it probably many classes later. I don't know how many classes later. 2 classes later at least, or 3 classes later. Here, all the way at the end. So the last sutram in the entire Hal Sandhi Prakaranam in class number 38, the very last sutram that we are going to learn, Jharo Jhari Savarne. So this Jharo Jhari Savarne Sutram, it is an optional Sutram. What does it do is it causes an optional Chakara Lopa. So when there are 3 letters which are savarnas of each other connected together, the middle savarna is kicked out. So see, ya, cha, cha. There is 3 savarnas are sitting together. Chakara is removed. So jharo, jhari savarne lopaha. So chakarasya lope krute. Even 2 savarnas are okay, 3 are not necessarily required. But here more the merrier. So you have 3 savarnas. The middle savarna is got rid of. So bhavai chete. So see what is happening. Let's go over this once again slowly. You start with Bhavan Shete. Step number 1, you do a Tugagama. Bhavant Shete. Then the Chutvam is compulsory. Then Chatvam is optional. Bhavanch Chete. And again the Savarna, Chakara Lopa is optional. Bhavai Chete. If you just don't do the last option, if you don't do the Chakara Lopa, so Chakara Lopa vikalpena bhavati. Atah Chakara Lopasya abhave kim bhavati? Bhavai chichete. Chakara is not removed. So if you do the Chakara Lopa, you get Bhavai chete. That's number 1. If you don't do the Chakara Lopa, Bhavai chichete. So that's number 2. But that roop also has a Vaikalpika Chatva. So what if you don't do the Chatva at all? So Chatvasya abhave, you stop the Prakriya right at this particular place. So Bhavai ch shete. So that's number 3. And all this starts because of there is a Tugagama. If you do not do the Tugagama at all, so Mulaha Tugagamaha vikalpena bhavati. Asya Tugagamasya abhave Bhavan plus Shete ityatra Shutvam sambhavati, because there is a na and there is a sh. So Shutvam sambhavati Bhavai Shete. So that's form number 4. Therefore, you have a total of 4 forms, all triggered because of this Shituk Sutra. Bhavan Shete giving Bhavai Chete, Bhavai Chete, Bhavai Shete, Bhavai Shete. That's what I was saying. Lots of convoluted prakriyas in today's class. So these are Chatvari Rupani. And Siddhanta Kaumudikara has actually given a karika to memorize or to list these all 4 types of form. So he says, pardon me if I am making pronunciation mistakes, but he says, Yachau, Yachacha, Yachasha, Yashaviti Chatushtayam. Rupanamiha tukchatva chalopanam vikalpanat. There is an option given on what all? He says there is an option on Tugagama, there is an option on Chatva, and there is an option on Chakara Lopa. So Rupanam vikalpanat. Kasya kasya vikalpanat? Tuk Chatva Chalopa. Ityetesham vikalpanat Rupa Chatushtayam Siddhyati. Rupanam Chatushtayam Siddhyati. Tuk Chatva Chalopasya Vikalpanat. Kim Kim Idam Rupa Chatushtayam? Yachau. So there is one form number 1, which is only ya plus cha. That is Yachau. Then Yacha Chaha. Form number 2, which is ya, cha, cha. So yacha chaha, yacha shaha. Form number 3, ya, cha, sha. So yacha shaha and yashau. So form number 4, ya and sha. So yachau, yacha chaha, yacha shaha, यशाविति चतुष्टयम् रूपाणामिह तुच्छत्व चलोपानाम vikalpanat. That's the tugagama, very powerful chain mechanism. The sutram is easy. She tuk padantanakarasya shakare pare tug bhavati samhitayam. So naha padasya tadantavidhi nakarandasya padasya she shakare pare samhitayam tuk agamah bhavati. Bhavan plus shete, Bhavan tuk shete and Bhavan ta shete. Agre tuk chatva chalopavikalpana chatvari rupani Bhavai shete Bhavai sorry Bhavai chete Bhavai chete Bhavai shete Bhavai shete. And अत्रापि एतादृशेषु सर्वेषु उदाहरणेषु अपि न लोप प्रातिपदिकान्तस्य इत्यनेन नकारस्य लोपः संभवति चेत् सः एव करणीयः. So just like the way I given atmanah stutihi, in the same way instead of na plus sa, give an example of na plus sha. Atmanah shaktihi. So atman plus shakti. You don't do any of this tugagama and so on because atman is a pratipadika samnyaka pada. So nakara lopah bhavati atma shaktihi ityeva rupam siddhyati. So that's all about the tukka agama, which is given by, where is the sutram? She tukka. So we completed gnoho kuktukshari dahasi dhutta nascha she tukka. Only one sutram remaining. Namora swadachi gamun nityam. Any questions before that? Mugdha.
So when we say bhavan plus tarati, bhavans tarati, tatra sakarasya agamah bhavati, padantarnakarasya takare pare. So is there any sutra for it?
Correct. So Bhavans Tarati. So that's a sutram that we will see in the tomorrow's class. Nashthavya Prashan. So that's the Bhavans Tarati example. But there is a little bit more happening over there. It's not a simple agama. There is some Rutva and complex prakriya. So I'll teach it in the tomorrow's class. Ratnakar Mahoday.
Namaste, Acharya. Acharya, as you said, she took. As a cross reference, I just remember there is one sutra called Jasahashi. There also, after that Jasahashi, even this Tukkagama is applied over there.
That she is completely different. That she is Adesha. We have not learned that, and don't confuse. She is Shakare Pare. That has nothing to do with Jasahashi.
Okay, fine.
Any further questions? No, there's absolutely no need to cross-reference sutras that I have not taught. So there are students, for example, in homework, they are writing the sutras of Subanta Prakriya, like Osicha and so on. There is absolutely no need. You don't need to write even a single sutram, not even the sutram of Shtutva and Chartva are needed. Many people are writing it in the homework. They are already aware of these sutras, but I don't expect a single new sutra to be known by any of you. Agre gachhamaha. So we talked about na plus sa. We talked about na plus sh. Now the next sutram is na plus ach letters. So this is basically mutta, nutta, and nutta agamaha. This is basically ngamudagama sandhi. So many of you, everybody of you is probably aware. Namo rasvadachi gamunnityam. Rasva swarad anantaram vidyamanaha padantang akaraha. So remember, for Padantang Akara, we have already seen one sutra, Gnoho Kuktukshari. Now we are repeating that Padantang Akara. Similarly, Rahaswaswarad Anantaram Vidyamanaha Padanta Nakaraha. And similarly, Rahaswaswarad Anantaram Vidyamanaha Padanta Nakaraha. So these three are going to get the same letters as Agama. Not these three, the Ach letter after that is going to get the Tit Agama. So let's go one by one. ह्रस्वस्वराद अनन्तरं विद्यमानः पदान्तङ्गकारः तस्मात् परस्य अच्वर्णस्य ङुट् आगमः भवति. So you have some ह्रस्व swara and then you have a ngakara which is present at the end of a pada, and then there is an ach letter at the beginning of the next word, this ach letter gets the mut agama, which is basically nakara as agama, which goes and sits in between. So just like the way earlier, there is a nakara, another nakara comes, and then there is that ach letter sitting next to it. So here is an example. Pratyang Atma. So Pratyang is the one who goes reverse. Like Prang is the one who goes forward. Pratyang is the one who goes reverse or in the opposite direction, in the west direction. So Pratyang Atma, there is a Raswa Swara, then there is a Nakara, and then there is any Swara. So understand the combination. Before the Nakara, there must be Raswa Swara. After Nakara, there can be any Swara. So Raswa Swara, then Nakara, then any Swara, Pratyang Atma, Pratyangatma. Similarly, ह्रस्वस्वरादनन्तरं यः पदान्तणकारः तस्मात् परस्य अच्वर्णस्य णुट् आगमः भवति. So sugan plus ayam, bring an extra nakara in between. Sugan plus na plus ayam, sugannayam. ह्रस्वस्वरात् परः यः पदान्त नकारः तस्मात् परस्य अच्वर्णस्य नुट् आगमः भवति. So tasmin plus iti, bring a nakara in between. Tasmin na iti, tasmin iti. And what is essentially happening is that nakara, then the achvarna after that gets a nut agama. Essentially, it boils down to nganga. Similarly, nut agama for after a nakara boils down to nana, and nut agama boils down to nana. So why do all these complex gutta, nutta, nutta agamas? Instead of that, just say dvitvam bhavati. So nakarasya dvitvam bhavati, nakarasya dvitvam bhavati, nakarasya dvitvam bhavati. Iti uchyate chedapi varameva. So this is actually a valid theory. Etadrushasya klishta agamasya apekshaya padanta nakara nakara nakarasya dvitvam bhavati इत्येव वक्तुम उचितम अस्ति इति अनेके वैयाकरणाः मन्यन्ते. So in the Hal Sandhi Prakaranam, there is a separate section where the Dvitva is told. This particular 8447 Anachicha Achorahabhyam Dve 8446. So if you go to this particular Ashtadhyayi, this Nadinya Kroshe Putta says actually a part of that Dvitva. So this Achorahabhyam Dve Anachicha Nadinya Kroshe Putta Sharochi Triprabhriti Shakatayanasya Sarvatra Shakalyasya and Dirghadacharyanam. This entire section in the Hal Sandhi Prakaranam is the section of Dvitva Prakaranam. One can simply add another sutram in this section where nakara nakara nakarasya dvitvam bhavati iti api bahubhihi vaiyakarணைः ayam siddhantah svikritah asti. So the sutram ngamo hrasvad achigamun nityam ngamaha panchami ekvachanam, hrasvad panchami ekvachanam, achi saptami ekvachanam. So ngamaha hrasvad achi gamut nityam padasya iti adhikaraha padat iti parinamyate padantad hrasvad ngamaha. Why do I say padantat? You basically do a tadanta vidhi. So hrasva swarat anantaram. I can in the anuvritti adhikara sutram I could say padat hrasvat. The meaning would be padantat. So ह्रस्वाद् गमः पदात् अत्र तदन्त विधिः ह्रस्वस्वराद् अनन्तरं यः गम वर्णः तदन्तात् पदात्. What is ngam? Ng n. So yam, the first two letters of that pratyahara are removed, of that Shiva Sutra are removed. Ng and n. So ng, that is the varga prathama, ta varga tritiya, and n varga chaturtha. Ng, n and n. So ngamut is again the way to represent the agama. It is a tit agama of the ngam pratyahara. So very unique case where an it samyaka letter is attached to a pratyahara rather than a letter. So ngam ityasya tit agam, iti tit agama. So ngam plus tit, that will be called gamutta. You have to add it as it samyaka. So varga panchamaha varnaha atra tit agama rupena nirdishtah asti n iti tit agamaha iti atra ashayah. And then ngamaha is panchami, achi is saptami, shashthantam padam nasti, ubhay nirdeshe panchami nirdesho balyan iti paribhashaya, achi iti saptamyantam padam agaminah nirdesham karoti. So achi ityukte achvarnasya. So trini purva nimittani santi, ngamaha, that's the purva nimittam. Achi, there is no, so many achas, so there is no mapping over there. But ngamut, that's the agama, that's the again 3 in number. So trini purva nimittani त्रयः आगमः अथ यथासङ्ख्यम् आगमनिर्णयः भवति. So understand, where yathasankham is not there, there is no yathasankham between achi or ngamaha. There is no yathasankham between achi and ngamut. We are not saying ngakaraha tasya agamaha kevalam a I u ityasya krute, then makaraha tasya agamaha, sorry, nakaraha for a I, nothing like that. There is no yathasankham for achi. Any swara is possible in front. Similarly, Rhaswat, any Rhaswa swara is possible. There is no Yathasankhyattvam. Yathasankhyattvam is only for Ngamaha and Ngamutta. There are 3 Agamas and there are 3 Purva Nimittas. So Yathasankhyaam atra Agama Nirnayaha bhavati. For the Yathasankhya, the numbers must match. You cannot randomly do Yathasankhyaam. So Rhaswa Swarad Anantaram Vidyamanaha Padantangakaraha Nakaraha cha Nakaraha तस्मादनन्तरं संहितायाम् अच्वर्णः विद्यते चेत् तस्य अच्वर्णस्य यथासंख्यम means for नकार नुट्, for नकार नुट् and for नकार नुट् आगमः भवति. अयम् आगमः टित्वात् आद्यवयवरूपेण विधीयते. So प्रत्यङ्गात्मा सुगण्यं तस्मिन्निति are all the examples. दलकृत्यं नमः इति किमर्थं? Only 3 letters from that pratyahara are given. Yam are removed. So मकारः अस्ति चेत् तत्र आगमः न भवति. सो तम प्लस इति अत्र ह्रस्वस्वरः अस्ति, तस्मादनन्तरं मकारः अस्ति, मकारात् परस्य स्वरस्य आगमः मा भूत्. ह्रस्वात् इति किमर्थं? दीर्घस्वरः अस्ति चेत् आगमः न भवति. सो तान् प्लस इति अत्र नकारः अस्ति, पदान्ते अपि अस्ति, परन्तु दीर्घस्वरादनन्तरम् अस्ति, अतः तत्र आगमः न भवति. पदान्तादिति किं? नॉट एनी रैंडम नकार, पदान्त नकार. सो ध्वनति, ध्वन इति धातोः तिङन्त रूपं. ध्वनति इत्यत्र ह्रस्वस्वरादनन्तरं नकारः अस्ति, तस्मादनन्तरम् अकारः. सो देयर इज एन अच् लेटर, ध्व प्लस अ प्लस न प्लस अ. सो देयर इज अ इन द लेफ्ट एंड अ इन द राइट. सो ध्वनति इत्यत्र नकारात् पूर्वं परं च ह्रस्वकारः, परन्तु अयं नकारः अपदान्त नकारः, अतः अर्ण अत्र आगमः न भवति. अचि इति किमर्थं? केवलम् अच् वर्णस्य एव तत्र टित् आगमः विधीयते. इफ यू से अवदन् प्लस ही, हकार इज नॉट गोइंग टू गेट द नुडागम. एंड फाइनली ngamo ह्रस्वाद् अचि ngmun नित्यम. नित्यम इति किमर्थं? इन ऑल द 4 केसेस देयर वाज वा 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 अनुवृत्ति आसीत्. सो अन्येषु सर्वेषु अपि आगम विधायक सूत्रेषु वा इति अनुवर्तते. तस्य अत्र अनुवृत्तेः प्रतिषेधः करणीयः, अतः अत्र अनुवृत्ति प्रतिषेधार्थं नित्यम इति शब्दः स्थापितः अस्ति. So that completes namo ह्रस्वादचिगमुन् नित्यम. I have now presented a table to show these agamas in a different way. So you can remember these agamas from the sutra order. That's also possible. But you can also remember these agamas based on the purva and para, which is actually easier as compared to sutras. So padanta nakarasya dvau udaharan, dvau agamau. पदांत नकारस्य द्वौ आगमौ, पदांत नकारस्य त्रयः आगमाः, पदांत डकारस्य एकः आगमः. लेट्स गो ओवर दिस टेबल. सो पदांत नकारः अस्ति, तस्मादनन्तरं श श स, सो दैट्स ग्णोः कुक् टुक् शरि, कुक् आगमः भवति. परन्तु पदांत नकारः अस्ति, सः ह्रस्वस्वरादनन्तरं विद्यते, तस्मादनन्तरम् अच् विद्यते. सो दैट्स गमो ह्रस्वादचि गमुन् नित्यम, दैट्स मुट् आगम. सो फॉर पदांत नकार वी हैव सीन 2 आगमास टुडे. For Padanta Nakara, same. Ngnoho Kuktukshari and Ngamo Raswadachi Gamunnityam. So there is a Tuk Agama and there is a Nut Agama. So we have seen 2 Agamas. For Padanta Nakara, we have seen 3 Agamas. Padanta Nakara Danantaram Sakaraha Asti Chet Dhudagamaha Bhavati. Padanta Nakara Danantaram Shakaraha Asti Chet Tuk Agamaha Bhavati. So this is Shituka Sutram. This is Nashcha Sutram. The previous is Nashcha for Sakara. For Shakara it is Shituk. And Hraswasarat Paraha Vidyamana Padanta Nakara Asti Chet Nut Agama Bhavati. Thus Namo Raswadachi Gamunnityam. And finally Padanta Dakaraha. So this is an odd one out. We were talking about the Agamas of Varga Panchama. Suddenly there is a Padanta Dakaraha. Daha Si Dhutta. Padanta Dakarasa Sakare Pare Dhut Agamaha Bhavati. In this way, you have multiple possible agamas, and in most of the cases, there will be further prakriya by chain reaction. Various optional forms are generated That is the reason why these 5 sutras are some of the most complicated sutras in the entire Hal Sandhi Prakaranam. Samapayamaha, this is the course website, and you also have a QR code. You can just scan and go to the website. Here is the homework for today. So Padante Hal Sandhau Vagamaha Samhitayaha Vivakshayam Prakriyaha Darshayata. 5 examples. Please write the prakriya in the way I have mentioned today. Sanshepena Uttarata चयो द्वितीयाः शरि पौष्करसादेरिति वाच्यम् इति वार्तिकस्य अर्थं लिखित उदाहरणं दत्त. सिंपल. यच्छौ यच्छछा and so on. रूपाणां हेतुक्षत्वलोपानाम् इति कारिकां स्पष्टीकुरुत. अत्र सम्पूर्णा प्रक्रिया नावश्यकी. Do not write all the prakriya, just explain what each of these is with the final form. नमो रस्वादचिकमुन्नित्यम् इत्यत्र दलकृत्यम्. I mentioned it on one of the slides. अष्टाध्याय्यां विद्यमानि कान्यपि चत्वारि सूत्राणि लिखत येषु नमो ह्रस्वात् इति सूत्रस्य प्रयोगः कृतः दृश्यते. So one example is say tasminniti nirdishte purvase. Don't use that example again. Tasminniti nirdishte purvase. You can actually see namo ह्रस्वात् sutram used in that sutram. So in the same way, Panini uses his own sutras in his sutras. So tadrishani chatvari udaharanani likhata. And finally, daha si dhutta tatha nashriti dve sutre prathak kimartham sthapite. Danoho si dhutta iti like ganoho kuktukshari. Similarly, danoho si dhutta iti एक और डिनोहो maybe just half डिनोहो सीधुट इति एकमेव सूत्रं क्रियते चेत् कः दोषः. So simple questions are there. Some questions. Ratnakar Mahoday.
One last question, Acharya. A little weird, in fact. You have given the example Pratyang Atma. That's what the word is, Pratyang Atma. But whereas in the word Angadikara, we are not using that way, though it is satisfying the conditions. Like Hraswakara is there and Anantaramapi Hraswakara is there. We are not saying Angadikara like that. Why so, Acharya? You got my question.
There is Anga. There is no Hraswaswara after Ngakara. You read the conditions. Hraswaswarad Anantaram Vidyamana Padanta. First of all, this is not Padanta. And then there is Achvarna. So you don't have an Achvarna over there. There is Ga, Anga. So none of this particular sutram is applicable.
Okay, fine. This I thought.
No worries. No.
Right.
Any further questions, discussions? So we will have class tomorrow as usual. Tomorrow we are going to talk about that particular, somebody said, right, Bhavan plus Tarati, Bhavan's Tarati. So that's a pretty convoluted, complicated prakriya. So that itself will take 45 minutes of tomorrow's class. Single sutram, Nashthavya Prashan, but lot of work is there. So that is what we are going to see tomorrow. And then Shutva and Shtutva. So Hal Sandhav, Rutva. So that prakriya is actually Rutva prakriya. Rutva, Shtutva, Shtutvani. So Shtutva and Shtutva are very familiar to you. Sutras might not be known, but we will talk about Shtutva and Shtutva, and then we will, in the initial part of the class, we will talk about Rutva given by Nashthavya Prashan. अस्तु प्रश्नाः न सन्ति समापयामः श्वः अस्मिन्नेव समये वर्गः भविष्यति. What's this? There are some additional slides that I created because I wanted to, but we don't have time. That's okay. Maybe some other point. Let's finish. There was some advanced Shastra Vishaya that I wanted to discuss. So I created some extra slides. If we would have finished early, we could have done. Maybe at some other time. It's not there in the homework and it was not part of the syllabus. I just created it. But at some other point in time, we can discuss that. Idanim samapayamah. अष्टाध्यायी जगन्माता यस्य चित्तात् समुत्थिता वेदानामुपकाराय तस्मै पाणिनये नमः. शब्द ब्रह्म समाराध्य कृतवान्यो विलक्षणं सर्वाश्चर्यमिदं शास्त्रं तस्मै पाणिनये नमः. येन धौता गिरः पुंसां विमलैः शब्दवारिभिः तमश्चाज्ञानजं भिन्नं तस्मै पाणिनये नमः. धन्यवादः.